In the dead of night, somewhere on the dusty outskirts of Giarankawa, north of Pretoria, the rain fell hard and angry, the kind of high-felt storm that makes people whisper about the ancestors being restless. Thunder cracked like the slap of an elder correcting a wayward child. Lightning lit up the old municipal cemetery on the hill, the one nobody uses anymore except for people who have secrets too heavy to carry in daylight. Thandai Nkosi, 34 years old, mother of 2, wife of 9 years, was not supposed to be awake. Her husband, Johannes Jakes Nkosi, had made sure of that. He had crushed 4 of his mother-in-law's blood pressure pills into her evening maju, waited until her eyes rolled back, then called his cousin, Solly, who owed him more money than he could ever repay. They carried her body, still warm, wrapped in the very blanket she had bought from Mr. Price the week before, out to the baccy. Jakes drove with the lights off until they reached the cemetery gate. Solly kept looking back at the bundle in the load bin, convinced he saw it move. "Stop being a coward," Jakes hissed in Sepedi. "She's gone." Hart stopped. I checked. They had already dug the hole 2 nights earlier, pretending to be fixing a cousin's grave. Shallow, yes, but deep enough if you weigh the soil down with stones and old crosses. The plan was simple. Thandai had her 1.8 million in life insurance through her government job, plus the house in Soshenguv Extension 12 that was paid off. Jakes had been forging her signature for months, moving money, changing beneficiaries. All he needed was a body that looked like it died of natural causes, and a death certificate. Burial alive was cleaner than a knife or a gun. No blood, no ballistic reports, just a quiet funeral in 3 days' time once the smell forced someone to notice. They lowered her in. The rain made the red soil slippery, like wet clay. Thandai's braids, still neat from the hairdresser in town, dragged in the mud. Solly crossed himself even though he wasn't Catholic. Jake spat, said a quick sorry, my wife, that tasted like a lie, and started shoveling. The first clump of soil hit her face. Then the second. Her chest. The weight pressed down. Cold. Heavy. Dark. But Thandai was not dead. The pills had slowed her heart to almost nothing. Doctors would later call it a pharmacological bradycardia so deep it mimicked death. In that grave, something inside her refused to cross over. Maybe it was the sound of her children's voices calling Mama in her head. Maybe it was the rage, pure and ancestral, that rises in a woman when she realizes the man who swore La Bola for her has sold her life for policies and plot numbers. Her fingers twitched under the soil. A small sound, half scream, half death rattle, escaped her throat, muffled by the earth now filling her mouth. Jakes heard it. He froze, spade mid-air. Solly's eyes went wide. Jakes, she made a noise. It's the air leaving the lungs, you fool. Finish it. Lightning flashed again. For one terrible second, Jakes thought he saw her hand push upward through the soil like a plant breaking the surface. He blinked. Nothing. Just rain and darkness. They packed the grave tight, rolled an old concrete angel on top to keep the dogs away, and left. By the time the baccy's taillights disappeared down the dirt track, Thandai Nkosi was clawing her way back from what should have been the end. The ancestors were listening that night, and they were not gentle. The rain kept falling, thick as pap, turning the cemetery into a soup of red mud and broken promises. Thandai's fingernails were already torn to the quick, blood mixing with soil as she scratched upward. Each handful of earth she pushed aside felt heavier than the last, as if the ground itself wanted to keep her quiet. She did not scream again. She had no air for it. Instead she prayed in the way her grandmother taught her, not the polite church prayers, but the old ones, the ones you whisper when the Sangoma's bones have already told you the worst. Modimo wa Badimo, if I am still yours, open this grave. If I am not, let me finish dying. But not for him. Never for him. Her left hand broke the surface first. The cold night air hit her skin like fire. She clawed harder, shoulder burning, lungs screaming for oxygen that tasted of death and wet soil. The concrete angel Jakes had dragged on top shifted just enough. One more push and her head came free. She vomited mud and rainwater, coughed until her ribs cracked like dry kindling. Lightning showed her where she was, the old section, past the rusted fence, where the graves have no names anymore, only numbers. She knew this place. As a child she used to pass it on the way to her aunt's house in Mabapane, holding her mother's hand tight because everyone said the dead here walked if you looked too long. Now she was the one walking. Thandao dragged herself out, naked except for the red beads around her neck and wrists, the ones her mother-in-law had tied on her the day she married Jakes, saying they would protect her from jealousy and evil eyes. The beads were caked in mud, but unbroken. She laughed then, a raw sound that turned into a sob. Protection. From jealousy. The irony tasted like blood. She could not stand yet. Her legs were numb, knees shredded. So she crawled, past crooked crosses and sunken mounds, past a small fire some homeless man had left smoldering under a plastic sheet. The flames called to her. Warmth. Life. The watchman's hut was dark, old Moses who drank castle light and slept through his shift. She found his overalls hanging on a nail outside, stiff with age and engine oil. She pulled them on, the pants too big, the sleeves swallowing her hands. In the pocket was half a box of Lexington and a lighter. She lit one cigarette with fingers that would not stop shaking, inhaled until her chest burned clean. Then she started walking. The dirt road down the hill was treacherous, but every step away from that grave felt like borrowing time from the ancestors. By the time she reached the main road to Giarankawa Zone 1, the rain had eased to a drizzle. A taxi, an old Quantum with Jesus stickers and one headlight, slowed down. The driver saw a woman covered in mud, wearing men's overalls 10 sizes too big, eyes wild like someone who had seen the inside of hell. "Sister, are you okay?" he shouted in Setswana. Thandao looked at him. Her voice came out like gravel. "Take me to my sister's house in Soshenguv VV. I will pay you when I get there." The driver hesitated. People who look like that usually have police behind them. But something in her eyes, something older than pain, made him open the sliding door. As the taxi pulled away, Thandao pressed her forehead against the cool window and watched the cemetery disappear behind her. She touched the beads at her throat. "I am coming, Jakes," she whispered. "And I am bringing the night with me." In the rearview mirror, the driver saw her smile for the first time. It was not a nice smile. The taxi dropped her at the corner of Block VV just before 3 in the morning. The streets were quiet except for dogs barking at shadows and the low hum of a neighbor's generator. Thandai walked barefoot. The watchman's boots had fallen off somewhere between the cemetery and the tar road. Each step left a red print on the pavement, like she was marking her return. Her younger sister, Ree Filwe, lived in a 4-room house their late father had built with overtime money from Iskor. The gate was locked, but Thandai knew where the spare key was hidden, inside the hollow brick next to the postbox. She let herself in, moving like a ghost past the peach tree that still carried last season's fruit, rotting sweetly on the ground. Ree Filwe was awake. Thandai could smell the coffee and hear the TV murmuring ENCA on low volume. She pushed the kitchen door open slowly. Ree Filwe dropped the mug. It shattered like a gunshot. "Thandy." Her voice cracked. She took one step back, hand over her mouth. No, you're... Jake said you had a stroke. He said they took you to George Mukari yesterday morning. He said." Thandai stood in the doorway, dripping mud and rainwater, the overalls hanging off her like a scarecrow's skin. Her eyes were red from soil and rage. "I was buried, Fifi," she said in Sepedi, voice flat and terrible. "My own husband buried me alive for insurance money. I climbed out." Ree Filwe started crying, the loud, ugly kind that comes from the stomach. She ran forward, then stopped, afraid to touch her sister in case she vanished. "You're cold," she whispered. "You're so cold." She fetched towels, a basin of hot water, Dettol. She peeled the filthy overalls off Thandai and saw the bruises, the torn knees, the scratches deep enough to show bone. When she cleaned the soil from Thandai's mouth, small stones fell out. While Ree Filwe worked, Thandai told her everything, short sentences, no tears. The pills in the Maju. The drive in the Baki. The sound of Jake's laughing with Solly while they filled the hole. She left nothing out. Ree Filwe's crying stopped. Something hard settled behind her eyes. "We are calling the police right now," she said. "No," Thandai caught her wrist. "Not yet. They will arrest him, yes. He will cry in court, say he was stressed, say I had debts, say anything. And the children. Oratile and Lesedi are still in that house with him. If the police come tonight, he will run. Or worse. Refilwe stared. Then what must we do, Thandi? You want us to go to a Sangoma? Put Muthi in his food. Thandai looked at the red beads on her wrist. They were the color of fresh blood in the kitchen light. I already have Muthi, she said quietly. The ancestors gave it to me in the grave. But first I need to bathe, eat, and see my children with my own eyes. Then we plan. Properly. Refilwe boiled water, added sunlight soap and a handful of coarse salt the way their grandmother did when someone had walked over a grave. She scrubbed her sister's back and saw the earth still caked under her nails like black half-moons. When Thandai finally stepped out of the zinc bath, the water was the color of clay. Refilwe wrapped her in a warm blanket and made her eat soft porridge with sugar and a spoon of peanut butter, the food you give someone who has come back from far away. At 5:17 a.m., while the sky outside turned the color of bruised peaches, Refilwe's phone rang. It was Jake's. Refilwe put it on speaker. Fifi, he said, voice thick with fake tears, the funeral parlor just phoned. They say Thandi's body. It's missing from the mortuary. Someone broke in. Can you imagine? My wife's corpse is stolen. I'm coming there now. We must open a case. Refilwe looked at Thandai. Thandai smiled, slow and sharp. Tell him yes, she whispered. Tell him to come quickly. Tell him you are alone and scared. Refilwe swallowed hard. Come, Buddy, she said into the phone, voice trembling just enough. I'm here alone. The children are still sleeping at your place. Hurry. She ended the call. Thandai stood up, blanket falling away. She was still weak, but something inside her had already begun to burn. Let him come, she said. Let him see what he buried. Outside, the first rooster crowed. Dawn was coming, and with it, reckoning. Jake's arrived at 6:03 a.m. in the white Toyota Corolla he loved more than most people. He had changed clothes since the burial. Now a neat black golf shirt, pressed trousers, the gold watch Thandai bought him with her first salary as a senior clerk. He carried a box of Albany bread and a 2-liter Stony ginger beer, the things people bring when they pretend to comfort the grieving. He knocked softly, the way a church brother knocks. Fifi. Open, my sister. It's me. Refilwe glanced at Thandai, who now sat at the kitchen table wrapped in one of Refilwe's old nightdresses, hair hidden under a doke, face half in shadow. The scratches had been cleaned and plastered, but the eyes, those eyes were not human anymore. They were patient. Very, very patient. Refilwe opened the security gate just wide enough. Jake stepped inside, smelling of brute cologne and fear sweat. He put the bread and Stony on the counter and opened his arms for a hug. Refilwe let him hold her for 3 full seconds, then pulled away. Sit, Buddy, she said. I made tea. Jake sat, rubbing his hands together like a man warming them at a fire. They say someone took her body, Fifi. Can you imagine? My wife. Desecrated like that. I can't even sleep. The children keep asking where Mama is. His voice cracked theatrically. Thandai made a small sound from the shadows, half cough, half laugh. Jake's head snapped around. The kitchen bulb flickered once, then steadied. He saw her. The Albany bread slipped from his hand and hit the floor like a dead bird. Thandai stood up slowly. The nightdress clung to her thin frame, the doke had slipped, showing the neat cornrows now stiff with graveyard soil. Her lips were cracked, but when she smiled the kitchen suddenly felt colder than the mortuary slab he had paid to rent. Looking for me, my husband? She asked in Sepedi, soft as a lullaby. Jakes tried to stand. His knees betrayed him. He fell back into the plastic chair so hard it creaked. Thandai. No, you were dead. I felt your pulse. Sully felt it too. Sully is a drunk and you are a liar, she answered. But you were right about one thing. Part of me did die last night. The part that loved you. He scrambled backwards, knocking over the Stony. Dark liquid spread across the tiles like blood. This is the devil's work, he shouted. You're not my wife. You're a tokalash they sent. Refilwe locked the security gate from the inside. The click sounded final. Jakes lunged for the door handle, rattling it like a trapped dog. Thandai didn't move. She simply lifted her arm and pointed at him with a finger still black under the nail. "You feel it already, don't you?" she said. "The soil in your chest. It's heavy, nay? You can't breathe properly." Jakes clutched his throat. His eyes bulged. He wasn't acting now. Refilwe spoke for the first time since locking the gate. "We haven't called the police yet, Jakes. We wanted to give you a chance to confess with your own mouth. Tell the ancestors what you did. Say it loud so the children don't have to hear it from strangers later." Jakes dropped to his knees. Tears and snot ran together. "It was the debt, Thandi. The loan sharks were going to kill me. You were going to find the forged papers anyway. I panicked. Solly said the pills would be peaceful. I didn't know you would wake up." Thandai stepped closer. The red beads at her throat caught the morning light streaming through the burglar bars, glowing like hot coals. "Peaceful," she repeated. "You wanted me to die choking on my own grave." She knelt in front of him so they were eye to eye. "Listen carefully, Johannes Nkosi. You will phone Solly now. You will tell him to bring my children here. You will tell him the police are coming and he must run if he wants. Then you will sit right there on that chair until the real police arrive. If you try to run, I will crawl back into the ground and drag you with me. And this time no one will dig you out." Jakes was shaking so hard his teeth chattered. He fumbled the phone from his pocket. His fingers left sweaty prints on the screen. Refilwe took the phone from him, dialed Solly herself, put it on speaker. Solly answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep and last night's brandy. Jakes." "It's not Jakes," Refilwe said. "Bring Oratile and Lesedi to my house right now. Tell them their mother is alive. If you are not here in 20 minutes, the police will fetch you instead." A long silence. Then the line went dead. Jake started praying in tongues, rocking back and forth. Thandai watched him the way a cat watches a mouse already caught between its paws. Outside, children were beginning to walk to school. A woman across the street started singing a hymn while sweeping her yard. Life went on. Inside Refilwe's kitchen, Death sat quietly at the table, drinking tea with milk and 3 sugars, waiting for her babies to come home. Solly's bakkie screeched into the street 19 minutes later, tires spitting gravel. Oratile, 9 years old, already tall like his father, jumped out first, school bag still on his back. Lesedi, 6 and clinging to a ragged teddy, stumbled after him. They had been told nothing, only that they were going to Auntie Fifi's for breakfast because Daddy had an emergency meeting. When the security gate opened and they saw her standing in the doorway, barefoot, doke crooked, arms open, both children froze. "Mama!" Oratile whispered, as if saying it too loud would make her disappear again. Lesedi dropped the teddy and ran. She crashed into Thandai's legs so hard the little girl almost knocked her over. Thandai sank to her knees right there on the cold stoop, hugging them so tightly Oratile started coughing. "You're squashing me, Mama," he laughed through tears. "I missed you," was all she could say, over and over. "Kugo hlalahets, Bonabaka." "I missed you, my children." Behind them, Solly tried to reverse, but Refilwe had already parked her own car across the gate. He killed the engine, hands shaking on the wheel, eyes fixed on Thandai like she was a zombie from generations. Thandai stood up slowly, one child gripping each hand. She looked at Solly. "Get out," she said in a voice that carried no anger anymore, only tiredness. "Come inside and finish what you started." Solly obeyed. He walked like a man going to the gallows, smelling of petrol and fear. Inside the kitchen, Jakes was still on the plastic chair, wrists now bound with Refilwe's washing line, thick blue rope that cut into his skin. A police van had been called 20 minutes earlier. Refilwe had waited until the children were in sight before pressing dial. Thandai made the children sit on the couch with a bowl of jungle oats and the TV on Cartoon Network. Lesedi kept peeking around the doorframe, scared to let her mother out of sight. Oratile pretended to watch Ben 10, but his eyes stayed on his father. Sergeant Molly Kekana from Sashangov Police Station arrived with 2 constables and a female officer who introduced herself as victim support. They took one look at Thandai's torn knees, the dirt under her nails, the red soil still caked in her braids, and knew this was not a domestic dispute you settle with a warning. Jake started talking before they even opened the charge book. He spoke fast, in a mixture of English and Sepedi, blaming the devil, blaming loan sharks, blaming Solly, blaming the ancestors for not taking Thandai properly. Solly just cried and said, "Sorry, sister, sorry," until his nose bled from stress. The female officer took Thandai's statement in the bedroom, away from the children. She wrote everything down carefully. The pills, the cemetery, the exact spot behind the old Anglican section. When Thandai described how the beads never broke, the officer, a Swati woman herself, touched her own necklace and nodded like she understood more than procedure allowed. By 10 o'clock the yard was full of neighbors pretending to borrow salt or return Tupperware. Word had spread faster than WhatsApp. Thandai Nkosi had risen from the grave. Some brought flowers, some brought prayers. One old go-go from Block L arrived with a live chicken for cleansing. Refilwe accepted everything with a tired smile. Jakes and Solly were led away in cuffs. Jakes tried to kiss the children goodbye. Oratile turned his face away. Lesedi spat at his shoes, a small, accurate shot. As the van pulled off, Thandai stood at the gate holding both children. The sun was high now, burning away the last of the night's chill. She felt it on her skin like forgiveness she wasn't sure she wanted yet. Sergeant Kekana paused before getting back in the van. "We will need you at the station later for fingerprints and photos, Mama. And the doctor must check you properly. But for now, go inside. Lock the gate. Rest." Thandai nodded. "One more thing, Sergeant. When they dig up that grave, tell them to look for my blanket. The one with blue flowers. I want it back. It was a wedding gift from my mother." The sergeant wrote it down without smiling, because some things are not jokes. That afternoon, while the children napped against her like they would never let go again, Thandai sat on the stoop drinking maju, real maju this time, and watching the street she thought she would never see again. The beads on her wrist were clean now, shining like new blood in the sunlight. She was alive. Her husband was finished. But the story was not over. Because some debts are not settled by police dockets or prison cells. Some debts are paid in the dark, when the ancestors finally speak. 3 months later, the case was already legend in the Northwest and Gauteng WhatsApp groups, the woman who climbed out of her own grave. Newspapers called her Miracle of Giarankawa. Church pastors used her testimony to raise offerings. A Nollywood producer begged for movie rights. Thandai refused them all. She had no interest in being anyone's miracle. She only wanted quiet and her children. Jakes and Solly sat in Pretoria CMAX awaiting trial. Attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy. The charge sheet was long enough to wallpaper a room. Bail was denied after the magistrate heard how Jakes had already tried to sell the Soshanguv house to a cash buyer in Limpopo. The insurance company froze every cent. Thandai moved back into her house with Oratile and Lesedi. She scrubbed it top to bottom with Jay's fluid and coarse salt until it no longer smelled of Jake's lies. She planted a new peach tree in the backyard and hung wind chimes made from the red beads her mother-in-law had once tied on her wrists. Every morning the children woke to the soft clinking and knew Mama was still there. But the nights were different. At night the ancestors came. They never spoke aloud. They simply sat at the foot of her bed, old women in dokes, old men with walking sticks carved from Tamboti wood, and watched her with eyes that had seen too much. They did not smile. They were waiting. One Thursday, just after midnight, Thandai woke sweating. The wind chimes were silent though the curtains moved. She knew what they wanted. She dressed in black, long skirt, long sleeves, no shoes. She took the small clay pot Refilwe had bought from a Sangoma in Winterveld, the one containing soil from the grave, a piece of the blue-flowered blanket, and 7 drops of her own blood drawn the night she came home. She walked out of the house without waking the children. The gate opened for her as if it had never been locked. She took a taxi to Sun City Prison Road, then walked the last kilometers to the open veldt where the Sangoma had told her to go when the time was right. The moon was thin, a clipped fingernail. Perfect. She dug a small hole with her hands, placed the clay pot inside, poured a bottle of Castle Milk Stout over it, and spoke the names. Johannes Nkosi. Solomon Mekua. You thought death was yours to give. Now take what you tried to give me. She covered the pot, stood up, and started walking home. Behind her, the earth settled with a soft sigh, like a woman finally resting after carrying a heavy load too long. 2 days later, on Saturday morning, Philwee phoned crying. Jakes was dead. Found hanging in his cell with a strip torn from his prison blanket. No note. The warders said he had screamed all night about soil filling his mouth, about hands pulling him down. When they cut him loose, his fingers were shredded as if he had clawed at something solid. Sully lasted 4 more days. Heart attack in the shower block. The post-mortem showed his lungs full of red clay soil. No explanation. The prison doctor wrote, "Cause unknown," and closed the file quickly. The ancestors had spoken. At the double funeral, families insisted on burying them side by side because they were like brothers. Thandai stood at the back wearing sunglasses and the same red beads. She did not cry. When Jake's mother tried to slap her, screaming that she had bewitched her son, Thandai caught the old woman's wrist gently. "Mama," she said in the softest voice, "your son bewitched himself the day he put pills in my maju. Let the dead lie." She turned and walked away. The beads glowed like embers against her black dress. That night she took the children to the grave in Giarankawa, not Jake's grave, her own empty one. She had paid workers to fill it properly and plant a white cross with her name and the wrong date of death. She laid flowers, lit a candle, and told Oratile and Lesedi the truth in words they could carry. "Your father made a terrible mistake. The ancestors corrected it. Now we live for us." Lesedi placed a small teddy on the mound. Oratile poured a little cool drink for the ground. When they left, the wind chimes in Thandai's yard sang louder than ever before, bright and clean, like laughter after a long cry. And somewhere, deep under the red soil of Giarankawa, the earth finally slept. No one ever disturbed that grave again.